Welcome, friends, to Breakfast in the Ruins, a Michael Moorcock flavoured podcast. On this show, which is a cheeky one we've slotted into the itinerary, Oliver Brackenbury returns to Derry Toms to talk about the next phase of new Edge Sword and Sorcery magazine. Oliver was last on Breakfast in the Ruins ahead of the Kickstarter for issues 1 and 2 early last year, with issue 1 having an all-new Michael Moorcock penned Elri tale. So if you missed out on that, you need to listen in and find out the details. And they're also packed with lots of other fantastical goodness too, from not only established authors and artists, but also fresh new talents. We seem to be living in a golden age of Sword and Sorcery and Sword and Planet short story collections at the moment, with our good friend Anthony Paconti being published in Tales of the Shadow Men, Anthology number 19, and David A. Riley's Parallel Universe Publications anthology series Swords and Sorceries, Tales of Heroic Fantasy, hitting volume 7 just a couple of months ago, to name but two. There are so many more I could mention, but I do have to discipline myself because I still have 4 volumes of Skelos, the Journal of Weird Fiction and Dark Fantasy, sitting in a pile from when I bought them 3 years ago, and I haven't got to any of them yet. It's a slippery slope. But we're here to talk about New Edge, and there are some more wonders in store, including an all-new tale for a classic character that dates back to the dawn of the genre. So, refresh your coffee pot and sit back as we get the skinny on the next phase of New Edge Sword and Sorcery with Oliver Brackenbury. Alright, so, we're back in Derry Toms, and we're welcoming back screenwriter, author, and editor of New Edge Sword and Sorcery magazine, Oliver Brackenbury. Oliver, great to have you back. How have you been?
Doing well. It's really nice to see you. Yeah, no, this year's crowdfund for new issues has me with a big smile on my face. Last year it took us 27 days to get the minimum. We did it in just under 72 hours this time, and it was a bigger minimum. So, I'm really happy. It's we're absolutely going to be bringing people new stories, new articles, new art, scads of new art. We've hit double art for a stretch goal, and that means, among other things, your listeners in particular will appreciate. We have a reprint of a Michael Moorcock story this time around, but once again paired with fresh new art by Sapro, who you would have seen her illustrations in issue 1 with the Folk of the Forest.
Well, I was going to bring up Sapro's artwork actually as well, because it really is terrific. So what's the... I'm going to ask you about your interactions with Moorcock shortly, but what's the Moorcock reprint?
This is where the salesman in me wants to be coy. I haven't actually said anywhere online so far. I've just been saying an obscure reprint. It's not part of the Saga collection. I can say that much at least. But I'm sure to serious collectors, I mean, there's nothing obscure. Oh God, cut this out. I'm just having an early morning brain problem.
You don't have to give the game away.
Okay. If you don't mind, sorry, I was going to. While I was saying cut this out, listeners, I was going to go to remind myself of the name because I've got a new puppy waking me up at 4 every morning, so the name escaped me for a moment. I do remember now, but yeah, if you don't mind me being a little coy, just because I mean, it would be a shame, I think, if someone only wanted to buy the magazine for just the reprint and goes, well, I've already got that one, so I won't bother. Because, as I say, it will be paired with original art. And maybe something else. I'm still trying to negotiate. We'll see. But at a minimum, new art, 2 pieces, and as I say, all kinds of other incredible works. I mean, in terms of the classics, I have to think there's at least a few more fans who also appreciate CL more. One sort of the big spearhead this year is that we have an authorized new Jarella Jarry story. We're working with the estate. First in 85 years, it'll be a novelette-length tale. It's been written, called Jarell and the Mirror of Truth, written by Molly Tanzer, who, among other things, edited Cthulhu versus... Swords versus Cthulhu. Still waking up. And I'm really impressed with that. So, there's a lot of stuff to enjoy in the magazine this year round.
Terrific. Yeah, we'll maybe talk a little bit about CL more shortly, actually. But I did want to ask, we should point out to everybody as well. Well, 2 things. One is I never cut anything out. So there will be nothing cut. It's warts and all. Everything goes. And the other thing is completely forgotten. So I'll probably... maybe I will cut things out because now I'm forgetting. What we should point out is you've only just got out of bed. And for me, it's 2:30 in the afternoon or 2:45 in the afternoon on a Sunday, and I'm full of fucking germs and feeling like my eyes want to close. So we're probably both going to have forgetful moments, but you know what? We'll battle through it together. Oliver. But congratulations on the successful launch of New Edge and Sword and Sorcery issues 1 and 2, which was a successful Kickstarter last year, of course. And that's the last time we spoke was when you were in the... Were you in the run-up to launching it, or had it launched? I can't actually
I can't remember. I might have been a bit more ahead of the game last year, and we did a little in the run-up. And then, like, I've got no regrets about the results, but it was very stressful for the first 26 days. There was 2 days straight we were just stuck at 79%, and I was staring bullets through my computer, but we pulled over and then really got excited once you're over 80. It's interesting seeing the psychological effect of numbers on people. And then off we went pretty much through the last week, and just in the final hours got double art, which I was really happy about because this year we once again had a double art stretch goal rather than making it baked into the minimum fund. And that's just because I wouldn't kill the magazine over it, right? If we only had to have one illustration per thing, fine. But my personal minimum, the minimum in my heart is double art because I really do enjoy the art direction. I really do think having lots of gorgeous art is what sets a magazine apart, from most novels and anthologies, right? To me, it's a big part of the point of the thing. And also, I've gotten people used to it now. With issues 1 and 2, they'll be expecting it. Every story had at least, some kind of like nice big title page, essentially. Some of the artists went almost more like movie poster in their design right at the beginning. And then, you get a second nested thing, showing you a specific scene or maybe even the ending deeper in. And this year is no different, thankfully, because if we just cleared that goal. And if you go to, we're on Backerkit this year. We switched from Kickstarter. I could drown you in crowdfund minutia for an hour at least. So let me just say, if you've ever used Kickstarter, there's actually a pretty good chance you already have a Backerkit account because Backerkit has actually been around for 10 years. They started as a company that would help people with Kickstarters fulfill the Kickstarter. And they would let you charge for shipping later and all kinds of other things. And I used them last year. So if you backed just in 2023, you probably already have an account with them. If you back just about anybody, Goodman Games uses them, So it's a super easy transition for people who want to check out the campaign and maybe support it. And making a new account takes 2 minutes. It's not a biggie. But it's just overall better, I find, and there's a whole bunch of under-the-hood stuff that only I'm going to care about, really, and other people who want to run crowdfunds. But for people who just want to check out some cool stuff, part of what's fun about it is it gives me a lot of tools to make it kind of more like a party. Now, obviously, the subtext of a crowdfund is you spend 30 days saying, please give me money. But I like to try and make it more than that. And so we've been having lots of, it's got like a big community tab. You can have lots of conversations, like a little forum just among people who are enthusiasts of what's being funded. On the page, and then also it makes it really easy and much more simpler than with Kickstarter to do live streams. So, we had kind of an opening launch party, and like yesterday we did a live stream conversation with Molly Tanzer all about C.L. Moore and that. We're actually trying to, build community, right? So I thought about it, and there's like, have you ever heard of a musical genre, sort of a niche thing online called Dungeon Synth?
Yes.
Yeah. So
in fact, if you just look over my shoulder here, Dungeon Synth cassettes.
Yeah, there you go. Well, maybe we should talk after because I'm still trying to build the roster. We're going to have a Dungeon Synth party live stream and have like a daisy chain of musicians where I'll chat with them for 10-15 minutes about Sword and Sorcery and Dungeon Synth, and then we'll play one of their songs, like a music video, or them performing live. We'll see, and just do a few of those in a row, just to have something really different. A reason for everybody to get together and just enjoy all this stuff we like. Until finally, I can now confirm, we just set this up recently, on the last Friday night of the campaign, which I should mention, the campaign ends 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, March 16th on Saturday. But the Friday night, we're going to take something we did last year and build on it. Last year, we did a final Friday night, like, telethon, right? Just me and the guys, and we all, did a shot every time we hit some new marker or whatever, chatting with people and stuff. But to make it more than just, a bunch of faces blathering, we had a bit of a fun game where I grabbed a hold of one of those early 80s romance D&D choose your own adventure books that they put out as part of their sort of outreach to try and bring in more women. And we just had a bit of fun where I read from that, and the audience would, kiss him, or, go down that door, and I thought, how can I build on that for this year? Well, there's a lot of things, dots connecting here, but in a nutshell, the reason I even thought to try Frigid Elri was because in 22, I saw a very successful Kickstarter for a role-playing game setting called Black God's Kiss, which, if you know, is the name of the first and most well-known story of Israel. And at first, I just thought I really liked their artist, Saprophile, not Sapro. I have two artists that begin with the same five, have mononyms with the same five letters at the beginning, easy to get confused. So Saprophile did the art for that campaign. I thought it was beautiful. Brought her in. She did art in issue 2 for Gemma Files' story. She's obviously coming back this year, and obviously I'm assigning her to the C.L. Moore story. My point is I then built on that this last spring, and I went, hang on, if they got the rights, it took me a whole year. I'm very intelligent. I thought, if they've got the rights to do a role-playing thing with Jarell, I wonder if so, a few emails later, and some, things get signed, some money exchanged hands, and voila, right, I got the rights to do this story. So I thought, well, wouldn't it be perfect to tie it all together in a bow in our final big telethon live stream? And we've got one of the guys behind that game coming onto the live stream as a special guest, game master, and they're going to run us through a 2-hour like Black God's Kiss scenario. And if the stars align, Molly is going to be at a convention, but if she can sneak away for 2 hours, Molly Tanzer herself, who has just had to get in the headspace of Jarell for her story, will play Jarell in the adventure that everybody will get to watch and shout at. So yeah, you see what I'm saying about how we're, without being too corny and saying it, I suppose, I just trying to make it a real fun party and make it a really good time. So I think, if nothing else, that might be a reason for people to check out the crowdfund on top of, the issues in the magazine. You can get back issues from last year as an add-on, so it's easy to get caught up. And just for fun, we made a rainbow metal enamel pin of our logo. So each one's unique and each one has a completely different spill of color over it. So yeah, lots of fun stuff.
Sometimes the stars just align, don't they? And I've got to say, I completely missed the fact that there was a Black God's Kiss role-playing game out there. Is that Kickstarter? I mean, I'm guessing that Kickstarter must have concluded, obviously, because, time has elapsed. But has that been fulfilled? Is that out there and available for people?
They are almost there. Like a lot of role-playing things, I mean, this is no shade on them. It takes a minute to fulfill it. There's a lot more moving parts than, say, me and my magazine. But I do know two things. One is that I believe the expected fulfillment is June or somewhere in that neck of the woods. But what I know for a fact is they do have a pre-order store, right? This is something else, like they're using Backerkit on the back end, like a lot of people. And so what that lets you do, one of the many reasons Backerkit's nice to use, is that you do your crowdfund, and when you're doing your crowdfund, you really want to make sure you have lots of reasons to make the crowdfund itself special. So if you back us in our crowdfund, there's exclusive stuff I didn't even get into, it's fun stickers and things. A rub-on tattoo of our logo I did for fun to reward everybody for getting us done in 72 hours or less. I looked into it as easy, why not? So lots and lots of fun exclusives in the crowdfund to make sure that's like, you want to do that. But if you miss it, then you can have, between the crowdfund and the final fulfillment of the thing, you can have a pre-order store, so people can still sneak in later, and maybe they won't get the exclusives, and maybe it'll be a little more expensive. It depends on how people choose to run their pre-order store. They can still order the thing, so that when the fulfillment for the original campaign happens, they too will get shipped a copy of the game or the magazine or the whatever it is that's being crowdfunded. So yeah, I can provide you a link to that pre-order store and put that in the show notes if people want to check it out.
Oh, super. Yeah, well, I want to check that out personally. I'm sure some other listeners will be interested in that as well. So originally I was going to say, how did issues 1 and 2 go, and were you really, really pleased with the outcome?
Yes, I must admit, it was funny. There were multiple points in producing it where I was thinking to myself, hell, it's got to be better next year. I can't keep doing this. But that was because there was a big learning curve, right? It was working with a professional printer. It was putting out 2 issues instead of 1, like our issue 0 we did as our prototype in 2022. And it was just, it was 2 issues. There's twice as many authors and artists and emails just flying all over the show, schedules to keep to. But it was of course worth it. There was also other things, like I didn't even know how the proofing process worked, and sometimes I don't know how you do this, right? I don't know what the magic trick is, but it's like you have to check yourself for assumptions that you don't even realize you're operating on. So before this, I'd only ever done like independently published stuff like on Amazon POD. Amazon POD, I mean, you can do it any way you like in terms of how many proofs you get. But I think the average is what I did with some stuff I did before, where I would just, work really hard on the thing, get 1 proof, mark that up with pen, apply the edits, and then the next edition would be the one that sells. There wouldn't be multiple rounds. And so with the magazine, the way, the printer sets the stage for that, and there were like 5 stages of proofs, and each one was very different. And I kept going, oh, there's another one? Oh, there's another one? And I didn't realize that our schedule got moved forward. And so, exciting behind the scenes stuff like that. And also, actually, I actually had a bit of an adventure working I got to be careful because there's a false familiarity that can sneak in. But I guess actually your audience would be familiar with the fact that he likes to just go by Mike in his correspondence and things. And I've been on other podcasts of just chatting with people, and I'll go blah blah blah. So Mike, and they go, "Oh, Mike, is it now? You mean Mr. Moorcock?" Just like, and it felt weird, in the first few emails that I had back and forth with him because just as Mike, and I'm thinking, oh Jesus, this feels like when you're a small kid and you call someone's parent, Jim. So it just, but I got used to it. Fine, whatever, So anyway, Mike, it was actually kind of a fun adventure working with him. I mean, aside from the fact that it was 110% positive, meet your heroes, kind of thing. He is as nice and sweet and professional and humble and wonderful as you could possibly ask for. At one point, actually, we got chatting about cats, and I ended up sharing a picture of my Siamese, and he loves Siamese too. He thinks he's got Mekong right now, though, so close enough. And I mean, just the fact that I can say I sent a cat picture to Michael Moorcock, I'll carry that to my grave. So that was fun. But I was unexpectedly, and through nobody misbehaving, just the way the circumstances took us, as a minor dramatic arc to working with him on his story, because when I first approached him, it was a pretty quick exchange. He was very generous and just basically said, "Well, my schedule's this. Can you accommodate it?" I went, "Yeah, sure, okay." And then, funny enough, I didn't even know it was going to be an Elric story until after the crowdfund. If you go back and look at our Kickstarter from last year, there's no mention of Elric, and you would think I would have shouted pretty loud about that. Yeah. And it's just because as soon as he said yes, I don't know, like I was worried that he would just flit away like a startled bird or something. I didn't want to actually tell him or suggest anything to write. I just, other than the word count. So I just said, 4,000 to 6,000 words. Thanks. Double thumbs up. I'll put your grocery list on the magazine, like whatever, it's from you. Yeah. So I have his name in big lights on the crowdfund, but no mention of Elric, and I didn't know that until a little ways afterward, at which point it was like I was getting him all over again. My exuberance was doubled up again. So I went, okay, Elric, great. Oh my God, I can't wait, Elric. And he mentioned this in interviews and stuff, so I don't think it's out of school to mention. Mike was having some swelling issues, I guess, with his hands that made typing very difficult. And so in the emails, as we were chatting after the crowdfund made sure it's all happening, he said to me, I'm doing my best. It might take me a little longer than I'm expecting. I think it's going to be more of a vignette. And I went, well, what's a vignette mean? How long is this going to be? He's still doing me a huge favor, but I'm worried that the backers are going to feel cheated if I just put in like 1,000-word, flash fiction description of a room or something. So that's sort of sitting in the background as I'm working with everybody else, because you're constantly rotating, obviously. You're not just looking at one person while you're doing this. And eventually we get to June, and we're getting close. July was when I was hoping to get it to the printers. Wound up being early August. And I check in. I go, Mike, how's it going? don't want to chase you. Just wondering how things are going. He says, oh yeah, I'm figuring stuff out. It's going well. And he said, I think it's gonna be about 4,000 words. And I went, oh, thank God. Okay, hurrah. Okay, it's gonna be a proper story length. And at that point, he well, anyway, sorry, I was going to get into too much detail. So anyway, great. And then we're getting closer and closer still to when everything else is done. And I've actually started the proofing process, because you can do a little bit without it being actually fully finished. So I'm really pushing everything else as far as I can. And then I sort of turn around, digitally speaking, to Mike and check in on him. And he says, hey, Oliver, here's a manuscript. I go, hurrah, great. It's not done, but I'm about to fly over to Europe. And if the plane doesn't make it, I just want to make sure you have something. Can you imagine the dark timeline where I publish the incomplete final story by Michael Moorcock in the first issue of my magazine? Jesus Christ. And then also a fun detail that he mentioned that it was joyful in that email. As I mentioned, we were talking about cats, and he said how he likes to, he's not sure it was okay with the rules, but he likes to sneak his cat in under his lap under a blanket so he can keep him company there for the flight, which I thought was just, like so much with him, very charming. Anyway, a spoiler, he made it. The plane didn't crash. And then I was in this situation I didn't expect to be, where I had 4,000 words worth of the newest Elric. And I don't know about you, but I was the kid who always had to open my Christmas presents immediately. And if I found them, I would peek. But contrary to my very nature, somehow I held off. I think it was because I felt it would be almost, and this is silly, I doubt Mike would care, but in my mind I was thinking, it'd be disrespectful if I don't have like the cleanest experience I can when I actually read the complete manuscript. If I want to do my job as editor and I want to do it as best as I can, working with him, so I won't look at it. But my staff, I've got to work with 3 other people, all just went, "Can we read it?" So I went, "Okay, guys, I trust you. Don't share this," So I sent it to them, and I said, "Don't fucking tell me anything." But of course, eventually you get silly and you go, "Is it good?" And they went, "It's great, just needs an ending." I went, "Okay, well, that adds up. Okay, can't wait to see what it's going to be." And then a couple of days later, Mike emailed me and he said, "Oliver, I feel so good about this story right now. I'm going to do a page 1 rewrite." And I went, "What?" Any other author, I would have lost my mind. But I thought, well, he knows what he's doing. It's Michael Moore. Okay, it's him. He knows what he's doing. Okay, all right. Oh, Jesus, trying to keep everything, trying to keep everything on schedule. But, he did it. He did it. Only a few days later, maybe 4 or 5, Mike emailed me the complete story. And at this point, remember how I said I was worried it was going to be a little vignette or whatever? It came out to 8,000 words. It got longer as he sorted out the ending, obviously. And I went, "Oh my God, hurrah, hurrah." Okay, so I thanked him, profusely in email, printed it out, took it to a pub near where I live, grabbed a pint on a Sunday afternoon, sat down with it and a pen and just had a first read. And it felt surreal to get to do it, even though I'd been having it coming my way for months.
Fucking great afternoon in the pub. That really is. I think back, I used to be a smoker, right? And I think back to how I used to really enjoy just going and sitting in a pub and staring into space and the ritual of rolling a cigarette with a pint. Something I would never do in a million years anymore because I don't smoke, number one, and because you can't smoke in pubs. But that used to be part of my ritual, if I was late if a train was late, or I could just go and sit in a pub on my own, stare into space, think, roll a cigarette and drink a pint. Can't do that anymore. But I would take that as a fairly decent backup.
Yeah. No, I must admit, I don't smoke, but I'm with you. I'm just sort of having a meditative experience. Turn your phone off or whatever, and just sit there on the patio or whatever with a pint, and just And so there I was up at this place on, for those who know Toronto, up on Bloor Street, and just sort of enjoying, seeing the traffic go by and occasionally looking down and going, "Jesus, it's still there." It hasn't vanished in a puff of smoke or something. Here I am with this new story. And I had faith in my staff and their take on what they had read so far. And again, obviously faith in Mike, but you just can't get away from it as an editor. You have the anxiety that the thing that you most touted as the exciting bit, you want it to live up to, the hype that you've given out. Well, obviously, it really did. But it's this thing of, if you're listening and you haven't read The Folk of the Forest, obviously I'm biased as hell. It's my magazine, but trust me, what I'm so about to say next comes from a place of love from Michael's work, not self-love or whatever from my magazine. He really, really, really delivered. And it felt like, because you often get people saying, "Oh, well, I prefer sort of the early Moorcock, I prefer the early, more adventurous, whatever, driven things that he wrote in a week or whatever, and some people maybe prefer the later Elric that's a bit more ethereal and thoughtful and so on." I found this had elements of both. And I found it was impossible to read without... how do I put this? He'd written a story that with very minor edit notes that we did back and forth after I read the manuscript could be made. It's friendly if you've never read Elric before. It's not a bad introduction, I've got to say. It functions on that level, but it also feels really rich and rewarding for someone who really knows Elric specifically in his work in general. And it had this. Of course, I was thinking about the ending a bit as I went in because I knew that had come in after, and. I don't want to spoil things, but I'll just say it had an incredibly touching element that I was not prepared for. It did kind of hit me in the chest a bit when I finished, which was wonderful. If it had just been a good, blood and thunder adventure or whatever, I wouldn't have complained. But it was phenomenal how that worked out. And so, something I can give you the link for, if you like. Sort of is an epilogue to this whole story of me being delighted with that, and then working with the editing was a quick and easy situation. Like I say, there wasn't much to do. What am I going to tell him? Here's how you write Elric, Mike. But just a few minor little things I gave to him that, understandably, he's been writing Elric so long that there were certain elements he didn't explain in the level of detail that a new reader might require. So that was all. Just added a little bit of detail on that side. Otherwise, nothing to do with it. Right? It was such a beautiful story already. But something your listeners may appreciate is months later, we started doing some, by we, I mean the magazine. We have our own little Discord server. We were chatting with readers and stuff. And I decided to do once a month because I mean, half of our slogan, right, is made with love for the classics and an inclusive, boundary-pushing approach to storytelling. So I do love the classics, but I do think that they get heavier than maybe we should have in terms of balance, focus in Sword and Sorcery. I think contemporary stories need to get the same level of, if not necessarily love, because they've got to earn it, obviously, but scrutiny and the depth of discussion. So I started doing a monthly series on our Discord that we then share on YouTube and stuff, where myself and a panel of a few other individuals who sort of float around that circle take a contemporary story and discuss it. And why am I mentioning this in regards to Elric? Well, of course, because we had a unique opportunity here in either December or January, whatever. It's on our YouTube channel. I'll give you the link. Author Christopher Rao, who hangs out with us, said, "Hey, we could do this thing where we could read the original version of The Dreaming City, right, from '61, and then we could read Folk of the Forest." And then we were looking at, the very first and the very latest Elric story and talk about what it's like, looking at the evolution of his prose and style and all that stuff. And also just thinking about how we relate to each story. And not necessarily, I mean, of course, one or two people kind of said, well, I think I like this one better or whatever. But it wasn't so much for that. It was just about this thing of really getting to appreciate all this time that he's been working on Elric. And it wound up being, I think, probably my favorite of those discussions we've done so far. So, I've just posted the link. I think people who really love Mike and his work would appreciate that chat we had. And it was so fun to be able to do that. And that was kind of the period to the end of the long rambling sentence I've been giving you of the journey of working with Mike. Because I don't know, I think what it was by the time we did that recording, I had enough time, probably 4 months or 5 months at that point, from when I'd been editing the thing to actually kind of step back and then return to it, and holding a hardcover of my issue number 1, which was very pleasing into itself. Just for the first time, really, since I sat at the pub, would sit with a hard copy and read it more as just a guy reading an Elric story instead of a person trying to produce a magazine and thinking about it from all those angles. And bloody hell, it worked again. It was still very impactful and enjoyable, even though I knew what was coming. And it was a joy to discuss, as I say, on the panel. So I'll have to toss you the link for that if you don't mind.
Yeah, do so. One of the things that Loz and I tend to talk about the Elric books, and our very first episode was about the Dreaming City. And then a while later, because in narrative chronology terms, we did Elric of Melniboné, of course, which was written over 10 years after the Dreaming City. And then we did The Fortress of the Pearl, which is written probably 8 or 9 years after Elric of Melniboné.
It was like 89, I think it came out, yeah.
Yeah. I think if you read... I mean, people have got the wonderful Saga volumes now, the Saga Press editions, which are absolutely wonderful. Although, you still get that massive frustration that you get the Saga volumes, then the release Citadel Forgotten Myths,
and then I come along and fuck it up.
Awkwardly slot in between volumes 2 and 3. Then you get other stories. Then you discover there are minor stories that have appeared in various places, have never been reprinted, so it will never be complete. And as a collector, that's both frustrating and wonderful. Because you always
it's nice to know it's never done, but also
it's always nice to think there's something out there that you've not actually discovered, and there's some rare gem out there. But yeah, you having that discussion is really interesting, because one of the things that Loz and I always talk about is the wild shift in writing style, in tone. I mean, to go from Elric of Melniboné to Fortress of the Pearl alone is a pretty big swing in terms of tone and writing style. I mean, in some ways that's more rewarding. I remember talking to a guy very early on when I started this podcast, who, I think there was a conversation going on Twitter, and someone said, what do I start with Elric? And someone said, don't start with Fortress of the Pearl. And he was in Australia, and he said, oh, actually, Fortress of the Pearl was my introduction to Elric, and I thought it was absolutely fantastic, and then I became a rabid consumer. And just getting the more vital 60s stuff just became like, a massive rush of sensation after reading this really thoughtful book, The Fortress of the Pearl. So I think it worked both ways, obviously. So yeah, it'll be really interesting to see that discussion. Yeah, send the link and I will share it with everybody.
Yeah, no, I will, and that, of course, chronological or linear, whatever, or publication order, I should say, absolutely was a discussion, especially because Folk of the Forest, again, for those who haven't read it, we're joining Elric in his adolescence. So if you want to talk about linear publication, linear time, then technically it's the first story you should read. But
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I said, I think we made it work pretty well for that. I really wanted it to be a nice introduction because, as hard as it is to imagine, of course, we've got readers who've never heard of Mike or Elric, and they go, "Oh, I like that Witcher thing." It's like, yeah, okay, but like, go back to the. Yeah, no. I mean, and that's fine. No shade. We all have to discover the influences of the things that we see maybe more of in contemporary stuff. I'm no exception. But yeah, I just would it actually work as a good first story? Well, that's a hold up debate that we literally had, so people can listen to that and figure it out for themselves. And yeah, I mean, you never know where you're going to start. I mean, I'm a William Gibson super fan, and I just tripped over. It was Idoru, and it's the middle of a trilogy, that book. And I read it and I loved it, and he wrote it in a way that it worked as a standalone. But what did I know, right? And then next thing you know, I've got all of his stuff, and here we are. So yeah, you never know where you're going to begin and what era of that person you're going to start with and fall in love with. Yeah, I just think it's so wonderful that you have that. So that was one angle we talked about, right? Was the chronological versus story linear, or whatever. Pardon me. God, I'm still waking up, everyone. Sorry. She's such a good puppy, but goddamn. The publication versus chronological thing. But the other thing was, I put to the group, I said, obviously we talked a lot about what would this be like as someone's first story, but none of us here are Elric virgins, and so as a result, how do you look at your receiving this story in light of it being refracted through your personal history with him? Because I mean, I, for example, can't read it remotely objectively anymore because I got to work with it through stages of publication, and I got to actually know the author, which was lovely. I mean, not that we're best friends and I'm going to be at his, whatever he's going to be at my wedding, but it's nonetheless, it's unusual. I don't have that with most of the big names I have on my shelf. So I got to talk to Kim Stanley Robinson once, whatever, right? Anyway, so there's, I'm sitting there with a unique standpoint, and then the other people on the panel had all found and fallen in love with Mike's work at different points in their life, whether it was when they were 11, they fell in love at that stage, and we all know what that's like, or found him when in their 30s, and it was very more removed and whatever. But what was kind of fun for me actually is, contrary to the amount that I'm talking, or the fact that I'm my only child and love the sound of my own voice or whatever. Mine was not my favorite point of view on that discussion. It was that of Kevin Beckett, our social media coordinator, who was one of my staff who read that earlier version, that was only 4,000 words and didn't have the ending. And basically, he said to me, "You'll get in more detail in the recording," but he said to me and the rest of the panel listening, it was that first 4,000 words was a rollicking good Elric adventure, but plainly what Michael was alluding to when he sent me that email going, "I'm going to do a page one rewrite, I've got it," was that he had found that heart that I told you that kind of slams you like a truck at the end. He'd figured out how to get to that and then worked back through what he'd already written to thread it in. I mean, I suppose you could say foreshadow, but I don't know if that's the right word for it exactly. Foreshadow sounds blunter than what he did. What he did was much more smooth. But yeah. So I mean, so it was very interesting to hear about Kevin's reading experience as well, and then all of this, like I say, talking about our various ways of finding and falling in love with his work and how that influences the way you read it. I don't know. This is stuff I live for. Surprise, I have an English degree, and I also I volunteer, have for the last 7 years at the Moro collection. I probably mentioned this last time. It's the Western Hemisphere's largest publicly available archive of science fiction and fantasy. They've got quite a few shelves of Mike's stuff, but just in general, they have over 80,000 pieces. And it's an incredible research tool, and I love to spend time there. It's actually a big part of how I got caught up in Sword and Sorcery quickly, because I didn't actually read any fantasy for a long time. I read everything as a kid until I was about 11 or 12, and don't ask me why. I couldn't tell you. But I got it in my head at some point. You have to choose a team, science fiction or fantasy. Which is it? And then you got to throw out the other one and not care about it. I don't know why. And for whatever reason, I was like, science fiction, it's more sophisticated. Never mind a million stupid things you can think of as soon as I say that sentence. And so I actually dropped fantasy for a good long while. And even after I fell out of the dumb idea that it got me there, I just wasn't in the habit of checking out a lot of fantasy. And so it wasn't really until about 6 years ago, not long into my volunteering to support the collection, I just was there and I remembered reading Savage Sword of Conan and I went, Jesus, did I ever actually read the prose? Did I just read the comic, which is wonderful, but still. So I picked those some Lancer Conans up there and started reading them, and then I was off to the races, and that included just devouring Michael Moorcock's work. I feel ashamed to say this, having published the latest Elric story, but I didn't touch him until I was in my mid-30s. And yet, once soon as I found him, just as much as I could get my hands on, and I'm still working through because there's a bit, as you know. I'm getting there. I'm looking forward to Corum next. I keep hearing great things. And I really want to check out those stories. And I have, of course, aside from the obvious Elric stuff, touched upon some of the Eternal Champion. I've read a bit of Jerry Cornelius. Yeah, I'm working my way through, so that's kind of neat. I'm a Johnny Come Lately, and that's influenced my take on it as well, right? Anyway, God, I feel like I could just talk forever about it, but what can I say? The punchline is to your original question, it was just like, what was it like doing 1 and 2? Well, obviously, I'm focusing on Mike because this is the podcast I'm on. That aspect was a dream come true, no complaints, and there was a whole journey unto itself that concluded with that recording, essentially. And now, sure, I said to him, hey, do you want to come back? And he's like, well, I'm writing my new novel, I'm kind of busy, but I can give you a reprint. Okay, sure. So no, I'm not going to complain. So as I say, we'll have a reprint of one of his short stories that was not an Elric that was not collected in Saga. Hasn't been in print for a little while, actually. And it will be having 2 new pieces of art by Sapro, so I'm very excited about that. Otherwise, in general, yeah, like I say, it was a lot of work and a lot of learning, but the final product is exactly what I wanted. And how satisfying is that? And everything we learned from it, we're carrying forward into these new issues. I'm already very happy with what we've done with the cover designs. We just learned some stuff, no shade on the actual artists of last year's covers. Let's be clear. I'm talking about the layout and design, putting it all together, that myself and Nathaniel Webb, who's kind of my moon glum on this whole journey. He's very much my second, that we work together on all things all the time. We learned some stuff, and I think we've come up with maybe a better, cleaner design, especially because now we've got to think about stores. A big triumph we've had is that we actually have just gotten a US retail distribution deal, so we can start putting things into shops. And if you live in the States and know a comic or book or gaming store that might want to carry a Sword and Sorcery magazine, let me know. But yeah, so I really think we're building on it and making it bigger, better, more beautiful, and just as affordable as last year without having we haven't driven up the cost. God, I'm babbling a little bit. Hit me out with a question. Now, what else would you like to know?
Where did you come across Sapro?
Sapro, I wish I had a more intriguing narrative there, but I found her a similar way to how I have found most of our artists. If you're listening and you're thinking, I'd like to do a publication, well, let me tell you, it is a golden age for finding really interesting artists, because I just look a lot at Instagram, Tumblr, Twitter before it kind of became what it became over the last year, and even a Blue Sky seems to be a pretty decent substitute for Twitter. And so just social media. I'll just follow people. I'll see what other artists are retweeting. A lot of the artists I found just because the other they were shared by other artists still. So Sapro, somewhere along that line, in that sort of churn of just seeing what's going on online, I found her art and I went to her Tumblr and checked it out some more, and I just thought this is some good stuff, and I paired her with Michael's story because she is very much her own thing, don't get me wrong, but she made me think a little bit of arguably my favorite renditions of Elric, which were by, oh God, he does really sort of elfin, ethereal Elrics from the 80s.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And I just thought, and I reached out, brought her on. She's wonderful to work with, very professional. Sapro, I strongly recommend her. And she also actually designed something fun we did for the crowdfund last year, which was an exclusive bookmark. And she did art for that I have very intentionally never shared elsewhere. So that was fun.
Yoshitaka Amano.
Thank you. Christ.
We got there in the end.
We got there. So yes. So that was again. I wish I had a more exciting tale for her. No. Some people you have a little story like that for File with the whole Black God's Kiss connection, but a lot of it's just finding people online, reaching out, seeing if they'll you can find something agreeable, and then bringing them on board.
This is the wonderful thing about the democratization of art, isn't it, really? The internet has allowed, it's universes wide, and it's really, really hard to pin things down. I think there's a problem for artists where they can get the stuff out there and find, but it's kind of lost in a sea of stuff. But the wonderful thing about it is it's there. and if you look for it, you can find it. I have a similar thing with music at the moment with Bandcamp. You know, and just using Bandcamp to find new music that you would never find in a million years through any other source, through any other way of promoting music. You just go on there, you put in a search term, you roll a dice, bit of luck, and you just come across some absolutely incredible stuff. It's wonderful. And I've got to say that Sapper artwork is fantastic. It's one of my favourite features, you know, apart from the stories themselves. All of the art is really good. But I really love her take on Elric. I think it's fantastic, and I'm looking forward to more art from her.
Yeah, no, it was lovely. And actually, her early sketch was interesting because, you know, if you've seen it, the first piece of art is just like a 2-column wide, page-length portrait of Elric. And I did suggest to her, I said, you know, the second illustration absolutely needs to be a scene from the story. But, you know, I said to her, I want you, Sapper, to get as much out of this as you can. And I think for your portfolio going forward, it would be good to have like kind of a platonic Elric, you know, portrait. So let's not worry about the first illustration showing a scene. Just make it your best Elric and give it a nice frame and that kind of thing. And I think it came out really wonderfully. But it was funny, her earlier version, I realized I'd messed up as editor. I didn't tell her it was going to be a younger Elric. And so the early one was a much more arch and kind of, you know, his cheeks were a little more drawn, you know, looking a little more evil. And then it was fun to see the transformation when I said, oh, actually, hang on, he's a teenager in this one. And he's got, you know, the world hasn't beaten him down that much yet. So to make him look a little more serene, maybe. That was pretty interesting to see that evolve. And then the sort of grand battle scene that we did as a full pager for the second illustration. I mean, she just read the story and came back to me and said, how about this? I went, yep, sounds great. And boom, nailed it. I don't even remember having one edit for that illustration. She did a fantastic job. And then, and it's a golden age for finding artists. One thing I would recommend for people that you can do, again, Twitter is imploding, but if you're still on there, occasionally artists do hashtag portfolio day. And you just, I mean, I've never really used hashtags much from either end, except for finding artists. You'll see hashtag portfolio day, or maybe if you're looking for certain styles, you might see, you know, hashtag South Asian artists or something, you know, and you get a lot more people from that, you know, corner. Yeah, it's really, really great, which is why I think you and I probably agree on this. We don't need to waste a lot of time talking about it, but it is part of what makes the quote unquote artificially intelligent art thing even stupider and shittier, because it's never been easier to find artists. If you're using that stuff, you just don't want to pay people, and I've got no time for that. So it's wonderful. And also something we do, like I say, I really want every contributor I work with, author or artist, to get as much out of the experience as possible. So we're very careful to make sure that we credit the artists on the title page of each story. It's not just the author. And we also, in our table of contents, underneath each artist's name, put, if they have one, which pretty much all of them do, their Instagram handle. So it's very easy if someone ends up liking them and wants to commission something, they can find them. That's I don't know if it's quite an ethical thing. That feels heavy-handed to say ethical, but it just feels right. It feels like the good thing to do, I think, when you're working with artists. It's another way to support them beyond the wage or whatever.
Well, let's talk about what's coming up then, because you've mentioned obviously the Jirel of Joria story, and when I read the mention of it in the Kickstarter page or in one of your posts, I can't quite remember, I thought, right, I'm going to get on the shelf and I'm going to dig out my my Fantasy Masterworks, and I said Sci-Fi Masterworks, my Fantasy Masterworks C.L. Moore collection, which is Black Gods and Scarlet Dreams, which is half Jirel of Joria, half Northwest Smith.
Her sort of Han Solo-esque character,
yeah. And I reread the first story, Jirel Meets Magic, and you know what? It ticks all the boxes. It's got beautiful prose, it's got the powerful, driven heroine, trippy psychedelic worlds, pesky wizards, Mortal Kombat, a few dashes of the Crimson, written in 1935, right in the sweet spot, the crucible of the sword and sorcery explosion. So how did you come? I mean, you've explained how you came to pull Jirel into the orbit of New Edge, but for people who don't perhaps know, because one of the things we have which is quite common, and actually it's for this podcast, we actually, because we cover other authors as well, we have had people who have pulled into the podcast as listeners who've enjoyed listening to something and then say, well, we've never actually read any Michael Moorcock, but now we'll listen to your Moorcock episodes. We're going to go and find some. Because you still have that thing where in 2024, it's still the case that even in the UK, and is Britain's greatest living fantasist, is not a household name, like someone like George R.R. Martin is, or anything like that. We did a Robert Sheckley book a couple of weeks ago, and my guest Derek, who lives in New York, Sheckley was a fellow New Yorker, Derek loves sci-fi. Never heard of Robert Sheckley. And we've got a similar thing, I think, with C.L. Moore. Who was C.L. Moore? Of course, Katherine Moore, wasn't it? But just tell us a little bit about Katherine Moore and why she's so important to the genre.
Right. Well, okay. So yes, C.L. Moore, who is Catherine the Steele Moore, she went by C.L. not because she was a woman writing at the time who was concerned about that putting off readers, but because she worked at a bank and she didn't want her boss finding out what she was doing in her spare time. The kind of thing of, you want to become an author? Well, I'll fire you. You can go focus on it. Especially because it was in the bloody depression, right? So she needed that day job. So that's what's going on in terms of CL as opposed to calling her Catherine Moore. And what she was she is an under-discussed, I would say, member of the Weird Tale circle. She may not have been quite as prolific as, say, Lovecraft or Howard, but it does frustrate me when you see publication after publication after publication that talks pretty much just about the boys of Lovecraft, Clark Ashton Smith, and Howard, all of whom are worthy discussing at length, but Moore tends to not get in the mix, or she gets mentioned sort of peripherally, because she did correspond certainly with Lovecraft and Howard. I can't remember if she talked to Smith. And you'll find her in their letters, and you'll find her in their letters in really noteworthy ways. Howard, for example, says, I don't have the date of the letter on my hand here, but before he finished writing Conan, and before he wrote Valyria, before he wrote Bali, and obviously Yonks before Red Sonja came onto the scene later, he said, to Moore, I'm really impressed by the way you write your characters. I think I'm going to try and step up my game with how I write the women in my stories, and what you're doing is inspiring me in that direction. So, in particular, Dark Agnes, or Sword Woman, as she's sometimes published, straight influence from C.L. Moore's work in general, but particularly, of course, with Jarell Jory. So right there, I mean, she's not just influencing people who came later, she's influencing her contemporaries in the Weird Tales circle, as you say, 35 there, right? I mean, 35 to 39 she was writing Jarell, I want to say. She did 6 stories, so if you want to get caught up, it's not hard. 5 of them are really good. The 6th one is debatable because, curiously, that one she co-wrote with the man who would go on to become her husband, Henry Kuttner. And that's a fun, sort of a goofy crossover with Jarell and Northwest Smith. And that's fine. I don't mind a bit of, mixing genres and stuff. But you read the voices of the characters, and Jarell just doesn't quite feel right. So you're kind of wondering how much influence Henry Kuttner had on that one. But whatever, I'm focusing on the wrong thing. The 5 main stories, Black God's Kiss, it's a sequel, Black God's Shadow, Jarell Meets Magic, as you mentioned, The Darkland, which frequently jockeys for top position in my likings, and Hell's Guard, which is our author of the new one, Molly Tanzer's favorite story. They are gorgeous. They're absolutely worth reading, every single one of them. And as I say, 5 stories, not too hard. There's lots of different collections. They were sort of all brought together back again in 1969 and have been in print in one form or another ever since. The cover's a stock photo, whatever, but if you just want the words, Galance has a paperback that's really easy to find. And Ace put out a lovely one in 1982 with my personal favorite cover. But anyway, whatever. There's a whole bunch of editions, including Your Fantasy Masterworks. So it's easy to find.
I do have the Ace edition, but I couldn't find it. But that is a beautiful cover. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for those listening, wondering why I like it so much, I'll just say in a nutshell, it has a portrayal of one of the most beautiful things from the very first story, Black God's Kiss, where she, in the story, it opens. This is the premise. I'm not spoiling anything. Her castle has been sacked, and there's this other war. She's a 13th or 14th century French warlord, which right away that's pretty cool. But her castle's been sacked. She's been captured. She's at her low ebb. What are we going to do? And there's this other bugger, Guillaume, who forces a kiss upon her and then chucks her in the dungeon. And the rest of the story is about her seeking revenge. And I'll just say she goes to another terrible, weird place. I sometimes jokingly refer to her as Alice in Wonderland with a big fucking sword because of all her classic stories, she pretty much always starts in 13th or 14th century France and within not too many pages winds up in another realm.
She always goes through a portal of some kind, does she? Yeah. Exactly.
I mean, Jarell Meets Magic, right? She's conquering a castle and looking for this wizard that you don't even know the whole story there, but she hates him and she wants to find him and kill him. And her men go, sorry, we can't find him. We've checked every room, kind of thing. What are you doing? And then the story sort of starts proper as she finds a kind of a magic windowsill and steps through into some other realm. So then off it happens again, right? So that was definitely kind of the motif with her, is her going to other weird realms. And that cover on Ace shows an element of the weird realm she winds up in Black God's Kiss, where she's going through this kind of inky void and not sure what's happening, where she's heading. And then a stampede of blind white horses charges past and around her. And the cover has her it's not what she's wearing in the story. Who cares? Cool sort of feathered battle armor with her red hair just flaming in the wind. And you know what's funny? I think it has been done. I think there's an edition. I've told it's more orange if we want to get pernickety, but there's a detail of Jarell's appearance always stands out to me in the stories, which is her, quote, leonine yellow eyes piercing, whoever would dare meet their gaze. I was very insistent for the cover art on our issue 3 there to have that and to have her staring you down. And you don't see that in most of the other cover art, but so I don't know if her eyes are yellow in that one. Anyway, too much detail, Oliver. What's the significance of Jarell? Well, aside from, as I mentioned, Moore being essentially an undersung member of the Weird Tales Circle, she did lots of other stories too than Jarell, of course, including, as we mentioned, Northwest Smith. There's a story of hers called Chambleau, which I really recommend. But just, you could look her up on Wikipedia. You don't even need to read the whole bibliography for you. Cecile Moore is absolutely influential and entertaining and stands out in her own way. It's not like reading just any old, Weird Tales person. She had a really evocative style, in particular, I found, for creating a sense of atmosphere and emotional depth. Jarell is a really fun character in the sense that she's not a perfect hero by any stretch. It just casually mentions at one point that she has a dungeon that people get tortured in, same as all the other warlords. And she certainly wasn't like a male gaze sex pot or whatever, but it does mention at one point that she says, well, I'm no stranger to light loving, like whatever, she'll take a fellow if she feels like it, in between all the bloodshed. And then, of course, as I mentioned, she's a stone cold killer with a ferocious temper. And how it got me there, thinking about her emotions, I mean, she has other things going on. She's not one note, but it is interesting to have a woman protagonist written in that era by a woman who just has an absolutely unapologetic massive temper that comes into a lot of her adventures and different scenes. And sometimes when she's in maybe more of a kind of a psychic conflict, as she is sort of in the story of the Darklands, that anger is what carries her through, but it also frequently gets her into trouble because it means that she doesn't think hard enough about what she's doing sometimes. Just yesterday I was talking on a live stream with Molly Tanzer about how when her and I chatted and I was trying to get the measure of her, we were meeting for the first time and thinking, do I want to work with this author? Obviously, I said yes in the end. And part of what convinced me was how Molly, I felt, really got Jarell, what she jokingly calls Jarell stuff. And one of the things that she mentioned was the fact that Jarell is not a thinker. She's not stupid, but it's just the fact that she's not going to sit in a room and ponder and go, well, should I do this? Oh, but what made me think I should do that? And get recursively introspective. She's going to think about it, get sort of annoyed, and then go off and see what she can make happen. So classic SNS hero in that regard, a person of action, no doubt. And even though she's a warlord, she's kind of an outsider. There's no one else quite like her, and this frequently causes her grief. And the other thing that actually Molly said that made me laugh and go, yeah, I think this author gets it, was that Jarell has terrible taste in men. I'll just leave it at that. And so that was an element that got brought forward actually into our new story, which much to my delight. Yeah, so why it's this thing where I say, Moore was the first woman sword and sorcery author, Jarell the first woman sword and sorcery protagonist, arguably. But if that was all there was to recommend them, I wouldn't have sought out to revive the character because that's just interesting historical footnotes. What made me want to revive the character was these stories were compelling for all these reasons I've given thus far, and I wanted, if you'll pardon the unintentional pun, more. And the joy of being a publisher is sometimes you get to make that happen. So yeah, much to my delight, all these years later, a bit of email and paperwork and luck, and finding a great author, we now have this 12,000 word story that's going to have 4 illustrations now, because it's a double length, right? We were going to give it 2, but we got double art, 4 illustrations. I can't wait. And I cannot guarantee it because the crowdfund is still happening. We were just a little over the first week now, so I don't know where we're going to be at by the end. It's not an official stretch goal or anything, and it's expensive on my end, so we'll see. But if the crowdfund really blows the doors off, I'm hoping to print that issue not in black and white, but in black and white and red ink, so that Jarell's hair can really stand out.
Yeah,
I don't run into that a lot, but when I have found it in old comics or whatever, I love it. It's gorgeous. So I'm really hoping we can have Jarell's powerful red hair, as it were, flaming across the page. So yeah, I think I could go on. I think I made that clear. But I hope that answers your question. Why I think Moore is an important, compelling author for her prose and style, and for learning more about someone who obviously influenced so much that came later. And just also spreading the good word. If you're reading it, like it, tell someone else, because more people need to be aware of her. She's under discussed in the realm of SNS and with the Weird Tale circles, in my opinion.
Oh, it's terrifically exciting for me because one of the reasons I love that Ace Pocket Books. No, sorry, it's not an Ace Pocket Books edition. It's the Ace edition that you referred to. Is I think what marks her out as a character is that cover, and it matches the contents of the stories. She's a powerful, forceful figure. I mean, I think it's really amusing actually in Gerald Meets Magic that when she's in this sort of weird soporific jungle of giant flowers, she doesn't pause for anything. She's got to climb that mountain, get back to that tower, and kill that fucking wizard, and it's brilliant. But the cover of that book, it's not the classic lascivious artwork for a female fantasy hero. There's no cleavage on show. There's, I mean, I love me some Frank Frazetta buttocks, but there's none of that stuff. It's just a beautiful, beautiful image. And yeah, I think it really matches the contents of the book so perfectly. It's one of the, I mean, it goes back to an era when a lot of book covers, and you know what, I love me some Bob Haberfield Moorcock covers, but a lot of covers don't really give you a particularly good idea of what's going to happen in the book that you're going to read. That is one of the most perfectly matched images to the contents of a book I think I've got on any of my shelves. But, going back to the fact that there's going to be a new authorised Uriel Joy story for the first time in 85 years is tremendously exciting, and what a great selling point for issues 3 and 4. It's absolutely terrific. So yeah,
and you know what? I feel remiss. Speaking of artists, I need to find Sasha Dodovec is the artist who is rendering our Jarell on the cover. And coming back to what we were saying here, I talked with him and said, you know what, we're bringing her back. The cover art should be her, just her on a stark white background. The dominant red that he's given her outfit that you guys can see if you go to Backerkit and look up New Edge. I thought really worked well. And he bless him, he immediately grabbed. He wasn't familiar with Jarell when I approached him, but he'd done a gorgeous Elric, which I can give you a link for if you like. His Instagram and all that, a gorgeous Conan. And so I thought, I bet you can do a really good Jarell. And so he had not read her, but he immediately grabbed that Gollancz paperback I mentioned and started reading, and he took from the text. If you look at the cover, you'll see that she has the sort of ancient Roman greaves, which never get explained, and that's fine by me. That are mentioned in Black God's Kiss that she wears on her shins, for example. So he really paid attention to the way she's describing the text and brought that forward in his own style for our cover. And I was so satisfied when I got back, even just the initial sketches, because Jarell basically became our mascot. I've used her in all the promotional stuff, moving forward for the crowdfund. So that's been sort of our spearhead. But I mean, we also, like I say, we've got Jarell and Elric this year. That's pretty cool to be able to say. Someone said to me, what are you going to do next year? I went, I don't know. Dig up Robert E. Howard's bones. I don't know.
Yeah, the bar is pretty high now, isn't it? If you keep on raising
I've got
that
some
bar.
ideas. But and I actually, just for fun, I looked into the right situation with Conan, and it's pretty sewn up. Surprise, surprise. I would need a gigantic whack of cash and luck and some phone numbers I don't have. So I don't know about Conan ever being in the magazine, but certainly I have my eye on some other classic characters I'd love to bring in to our pages. And also we have Harry Turtledove, actually, for the fans of his work. Doing a sword and sorcery story. As you can imagine with him, it is rooted in actual history, but there are fantastic elements that make it appropriate for the magazine. And so that's fun. We've got him. And then just, a whole bunch of other authors that I'm very, very happy to have. I don't want to rattle off all the names because there's so many, but I will mention, if you've read us last year, you might enjoy seeing the return of Daryl Keogh. We'll have Orahan the Snow Leopard will be returning, for example. Or, June Orchid Parker, who, this is part of the fun of actually last year. I'll just say, on the one end of the experience spectrum, we had Michael Moorcock, and then all the way through, various mid-listers and so on, all the way down to June Orchid Parker, I mentioned because it was her very first published story ever. And it was just really, so it was nice to have that, spectrum, as I say. And it's always nice to get an author started. That was pleasing. And that was pure chance, actually. June was a member of our Discord, and not that she threw it at me. I mean, please don't join the Discord just to try and submit to me. But she just chucked up a story in our channel that we have for beta readers. And I normally would have had no time. This was last June. I was in the middle of everything. But I got hit with a really bad cold, and I just was crashed in bed, just staring at the ceiling. Couldn't make any big decisions for the running of the magazine. And I thought, well, I'll read a story. read it, loved it, reached out, found it a bit of wiggle room in the budget, and so that's why there's an 8th story in issue 2. So June will be back. Oh god, I mean, what else is there that's fun? Well, I guess I will tell a little bit about some of the crowdfund stuff that's kind of fun. So that relates to this, because last year we did the traditional thing, right, with a lot of Kickstarters, where you have a thank you page, just listing a bunch of names of people, and nothing wrong with that. I'm glad we did it. But this year going in, like I say, my attitude to everything was, how can we do this a little different? How can we build on it? So I thought, what can be our sort of thank you page, as it were, this time? And I think 9-year-old Oliver really has been taking the wheel more than I expected with this one, because, like I said, we, as our sort of thank you for getting us funded so quickly, rub-on tattoos, right? So in a similar vein, I thought about the thank you page and what could be more interesting or different, at least there. And I remembered my great love as a kid of sticker books. You'd get the thing and they'd be like, various numbered empty frames, and you buy the packs of stickers at random and try and match. Oh, number 9. Okay, good. I can fill that one now on the page. Usually based around a movie or series you really liked. I mean, maybe I'm showing my age here, but I really was fond of, the first one I remember, the primordial Rosebud sled for me was Batman 1989. But yeah, anyway, point is, I thought, well, okay, so with Backerkit, they make it easier to track a bunch of stuff that, so you can have not only a reward for all your backers, but you can have a reward for returning backers. It can tell who got you last time, even if it was on another platform. And of course, there's always the early incentive, who backs us in the first 48 hours. So that's like 3 different rewards. I thought, God, what am I going to, one of them's going to be a hat, one of them's going to be, what am I going to, oh, I know, sticker page. One sticker is half the page, flash fiction, an original piece of little fiction. That's for everybody who backs us. And then for people in the first 48 hours, we got a piece of art to go with that little flash fiction. And then finally, the returning backers, got the art. First 48 hours, get the something silly we did last year that we ended up falling in love with, which was put a cocktail recipe with an SNS theme at the back of each issue with an illustration. And don't worry, and actually last year, I wish we'd held on to it. Last year we did the Jarell cocktail in one issue, and the Elric in number 1 made sense to us. And there are good cocktails, actually. Kevin, our social media guy, makes them and tests them, and they are quite tasty. So this year we'll have 2 more of those, and there'll be stickers. And for people who missed the first 48 hours or are not returning backer, you can get them for $1 as an add-on. So don't worry, it's not like full scarcity. So that's something else kind of fun we were doing this year that I really appreciate. And
I'm an absolute sucker for that type of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Although I do have a ridiculous amount now of like iron-on or so-on jacket patches from things like sci-fi RPGs that I've never even got around to reading, and stickers and various other bits and pieces. I think they're all just scattered around the house, gathering dust or in drawers where from when I open them. But I still can't help myself. I love that type of thing. But you know what? You got to reward people for a bit of faith, haven't you? So yeah,
exactly,
good for you.
And make it special. Plus, I mean, my feeling with the stickers is you put them in the book, and there you go, right? I did consider patches. I do like the idea, but it's true. With certain things, they sound fun individually, but once you get enough of them, it's like I've only got so many jackets and backpacks that I can cover in these things. So I felt like something that's going to be a part of the book was the way to go. So I mean, between the stickers and the for the hardcover edition bookmark ribbons, and I have had sort of stealth stretch goals that we didn't announce, but I have in the budget, and one of them is another upgrade for our hardcovers, actually. So I don't want to. Do I give it away? You know what? I'll be nice. I'll give it away. All right. So barring catastrophe, which I don't think will happen between now and the end of the crowdfund, we have raised enough, or on the cusp of raising enough. We're doing it. God damn it! I want to do nice end pages for the hardcovers. Now, for those of you who don't know the term, but you've definitely seen this, don't worry. Basically, when you get a nice hardcover and you open it up right between the cover and the very first bit of paper, and there's like a repeating pattern or a painting, that's what end pages are. And you'll see that again on the other side of the book, usually identical. So the hardcovers, I found a really wonderful artist whose name escapes me, of course, Christ. And I think, they have an alias, Babe and Oak. So maybe it's a duo and I don't realize I'm dumb. But anyway, Babe and Oak, offering not far out of Toronto, actually, it was fun. They are really good at making lovely repeating patterns of various kinds. I chose to go with a scatter pattern, which basically means something where it's not just straight lines up and down, but the elements are scattered in a way that creates a sense of depth. They showed me a lovely example that looked like if you were lying on your back and full leaves were coming down towards you. And I thought, well, okay, what if we have like an inky black void? Now, we're still working on the design, so we'll see what the final thing is. But what if we have like a big 2-page spread, right? Because that's how it works with the end page, of an inky black void with a more detailed version of the Ness battle axe, our logo, with a face looking back and forward, kind of swirling, and maybe like literal serpents and sort of magical sparks and what have you, sorcery of various color, all against that black void, floating around in this way that creates a sense of depth, like you're falling through a pit of sword and sorcery. I don't know. We'll see how it comes out at the end. But I'm so excited to get that into the magazine, and we might even find a way to make it more specific still to the individual hardcover issue that you get, because those who read us already know this. What I love to do is each issue we make the logo 2 different colors that are pulled from the cover art, right? So say there's a really vivid orange and a really vivid blue-black. That was issue 2. Okay, that's the logo. Then it's orange and blue-black. And then, so for this, it's like the ribbons are going to be one of those 2 colors, the bookmark ribbons, but also I'm hoping to maybe customize a little bit the end pages so that some of the sorcery will be, let's say, orange and blue-black if we've done it with issue 2. So this is to give you an idea of just how bloody anal retentive I am. But I like to think the end result is you get something very particular for yourself. And the hardcovers are very much, we're not trying to create artificial scarcity. I promise. It's just a case of they're a bit more expensive to print, so we don't print anywhere near as many as the soft covers. And so if you really like the idea of getting a hardcover magazine with things like the bookmark ribbon and so on, the end pages, definitely check out the crowdfund, because as of now, we have a few copies left of issue 2 in hardcover, which are as an add-on on the thing, why not? But we sold out of number 1, as you can imagine, with Michael in there, about a month before the crowdfund even launched, and that's it. I'm actually getting very precious about my copy, because if it got destroyed, I couldn't, or lost or whatever, I couldn't replace it. Not unless I had $5,000 just lying around, because this is the thing. It's about scale. It costs a lot to print a lot of them, to print the magazine, the hardcovers individually. And the only reason we can even afford to really do it is because, sorry, you're getting a bit wonky, but for those who like this kind of detail, is the interior is the same as our soft cover. So in a sense, it's like we're printing 1,000 copies, even though we're really only printing like 900 soft cover and about 125, maybe more this year, hardcover. So yeah, it's actually it's a way to affordably do a ridiculously low print run, but we can't do it for a reprint because it just doesn't work out economically. So yeah, if you like the idea of a gorgeous hardcover, get in there on the crowdfund. I promise you, this is just me saying it as a collector to another collector, not the guy selling the thing. Yeah.
Well, you know what? I've already backed it for the hardcovers. Everybody listening, get on Backerkit. It's new Edge Sword and Sorcery issues 3 and 4. Closes on March the 15th. So get in there and get back in. So before we finish, now a couple of weeks ago when we were arranging this, we had a slight abortive date, but you mentioned that you had a narrow slot on one of the dates we were considering because your gaming group was coming round. And because I have constant gaming envy, my last question is to you, what are you playing at the moment?
Oh, okay. Well, I am playing, it's been running a little while now. It kind of got stretched out by, COVID's more intense period there, but about 4 or 5 years, I guess we've been going now with a Dungeon Crawl Classic. I am a big fan of it. It's funny, I didn't actually play any D&D or D&D-like games until not too many years ago when I tried Beyond the Wall, which is lovely in its own right. But when I was wrapping that up, I was looking over at ads I was seeing for Dungeon Crawl Classic and just hearing how wild it was. The magic system, every spell gets like 2 pages in the rulebook, which sounds onerous until you realize there's actually very little description you need to read for the spell. And then there's a huge table because it's so wild and random, and you can pump up the results dramatically by doing something called spell burn, which basically means you cut off your finger and say, oh, blood for Ariok, and you get +10 on the die result, right? So then you can make that sleep spell go from just, these goblins in front of us fall over for 5 minutes or whatever, to the top result, which a player in my campaign has done twice now. Every single living creature, even plants, close their petals or whatever. Every single living thing within 500 meters falls asleep until you decide they don't. So you can just say they sleep until they starve to death. They can sleep until the moon turns full. They can sleep until somebody eats a crumpet within this radius. Whatever the hell you feel like. And that's just the sleep spell. Good old sleep gets so much more fun and exciting once you get into the higher end results of that spell. And there's plenty of other, ones that just in their base premise are more crazy. The warriors are lots of fun, I like, because I personally have played many, I came up with the RPGs in the 90s, and this is, I think, when you started to get increased complexity in role-playing games in the sense of individual characters would start getting like lots of feats and special abilities that would get hard to track as you got up in levels. And warriors even, let's make them interesting. They've got the jump kick feat, and they've got the parry feat, and it's like after a while you've just got like 9 buttons almost to press with your warrior, and you just forget about them half the time during combat. Dungeon Crawl Classics does something really elegant where the warriors have something called the Mighty Deed die. And so instead of having a million things to remember or whatever, you just go, well, all right, when I roll to attack, if I get a 3 or a higher on the Mighty Deed die that you roll in tandem with your d20, it also adds to hit and your damage, so it makes warriors fiercer, right? If you get a 3 or higher, and you say, I'm going to try and grab the chandelier, slide off it, and kick the guy in the nuts. Okay. And then, I hit him, and I got a 3 or higher, and the GM then goes, okay, I'm going to interpret this then. And the GM just tells you, how it looks, but also how that gives you a bonus and more damage, or the guy gets knocked prone or whatever. So, even the Humble Warrior is more interesting, I feel. And yeah, it's just sort of the classic classes, and it does races class. So you've got elves, dwarves, and I think they said hobbits. Wow. Halflings. But then just good games overall. I think the two, well, again, lost in detail, the two things that make me love Dungeon Crawl Classic and everything else they do adjacent, because they've got Mutant Crawl Classic, and they've got specific settings like Dungeon Crawl Classic Lankmar, which is a super legit, wonderful thing. I love that. And they've just come out recently with DCC Dying Earth, where you can play as a Vancian Vat thing, or essentially Kugel the Clever. They call it the Wayfarer, and his relationship to luck is a cyclical thing that kind of mirrors how Kugel would sort of get in and out of trouble. It's really fun at the table. But overall, the ethos that infuses everything they do, because I could fill another 2 hours talking about that, is a sense of let's streamline things in a way that lets you engage your imagination. So like I say, the Mighty Deed thing, or the fact that there are no actual skills. It's more like, well, just infer from whatever your character's profession was before they became an adventurer. If they're a beekeeper, they probably aren't very good at navigation, so don't get a bonus on that. Whatever. Even though the rulebook's a tome, once you realize that a lot of it's just spell tables, it's actually pretty quick to pick up and a lot of fun. And also the other thing I like, aside from the fact that it tends to go more for do what's cool and fun and using your imagination, and this is also in the modules and how they're written. They're wild, the modules. It also is really rooted in the literature, and in fact played a part in putting me on the path to doing the magazine. Because in the back of the main book, it not only has the Appendix N reading list reprinted, originally from 1979's Advanced Dungeon Master Guide. For anybody listening who doesn't know, that was a list of texts and authors who inspired Gary Gygax when he was co-creating the thing, D&D. So not only does it have that list, but it just has a long kind of love letter to that list explaining why it matters and saying why it's fun to go through secondhand bookstores and try and tick things off from it and so on and so forth. And I just think that's really cool, because as you can guess from everything else I've said today, I really believe strongly in the importance of understanding and checking out the history of the genre that you love, whether or not you want to be a writer or a publisher. So the fact that they have that ethos woven into my hobby is just wonderful. So it's combining all the things that I love. And don't tell any of my players who I don't know that they'll listen to this, but right now, for anyone who plays DCC, you'll get a kick out of it hearing perhaps all my characters are level 3, and I can't wait till they get to 4, because I'm trying to get them to the Purple Planet, which is the DCC big box set of essentially Sword and Planet. You can, through an Edgar Rice Burroughs, conceit, you just go whoop, and they wind up on a planet with a dying purple sun and big weird mushrooms that you've got to eat to survive, and it's great stuff. I love it. So we're almost there. And yeah, it's a great system. I love it. I do big day-long games once a month on Sunday, on the second Sunday, and it's a riot. I love it.
I'm in no way envious, but I do love Dungeon Crawl Classics and Mutant Crawl Classics because they're the only paperback role-playing manuals I've ever come across that are so chonky you can stand them up on edge and they don't fall over. They are so chunky and stable, it is absolutely ridiculous. Those books are built. But you know what, on that note, thanks for dropping by again, Oliver. We'll love to hear your thoughts. We'll love to hear all these musings on all of this stuff. And thanks for dropping by.
Thanks for giving me your time. I really appreciate it. And hey, everyone, just go to Backerkit.com and search for New Edge, Sword and Sorcery. We're the only one, I promise. And I'm sure there'll be a link in the show notes. Thanks, mate.
There certainly will. All right. Cheers, Oliver. Massive thanks to Oliver for dropping by Derry Toms again to tell us about his experience working with Mike and the next phase of New Edge Sword and Sorcery. I'll pop all the appropriate links in the show notes, but do check out New Edge Sword and Sorcery on Backerkit. And thanks as always to our patrons for keeping this show on the road. those without Tia, Anthony Piconti, Tim Cardos, Dave Dempster, and Sebastian Weetabix. And our Chaos engineers Andrew Cicluna, Andrew Spong, Andrew Van Ness, Anthony Porter, Benjamin Fletcher, Brandon Mays, Dave Griffiths, Dave Voxman, Gabriel Laycock, Harvey Faulkner Aston, Jim Kirkland, Jim Knight, Jim Jupp, John W. Lays, Jules Lawrence, Mal Pertwee, Mary Catherine, Matt Saltz, Nelbert, Urfa Ziv, Paul McRandall, PJ Cooper, Scott Butler, Simon Perrins, and, new to the Don Blass, Dan Charnley. As is traditional, I dropped Dan a line to see where he is and what he digs, and he said, "Your podcast was introduced to me via Tony Esmond of the Awesome Comics podcast. Now here is something for you. I have to admit, I've never read a Moorcock book. I met him in 1994 when he came to the Preston Speculative Fiction Group meeting, and now long-defunct group in my hometown. Yes, I'm UK-based and live in Preston. Here is a link if you're interested. Anyway, he's been on my list to read for years, but I'm a big horror fan, and just trying to keep up with those is bad enough. I'm currently trying to complete my collection of New English Library horror titles, plus Guy and Smith books, plus some westerns. Those are the ones I always find a piece of torn toilet paper that has been used as a bookmark. I make sure I wash my hands after reading. The list goes on. So, what do you recommend I start with? Apart from Time of the Hawklords, I'm saving that for my holidays. I love your episodes about the horror stuff. The Biker Mania one was epic. However, I'm trying to catch up on them all." That's amazing. Thanks, Dan. And thanks, Tony, of the actually awesome Comics podcast, too, for sending Dan our way. I'll stick the link to that Preston Speculative Fiction blog post in the show notes. It's a great read. Dan is also a podcaster and an artist. You can find him on Instagram as @DansMonsters and YouTube at youtube.com/@themonsterbombclub. His podcast is on Spotify and it's called Dan Rambles, and he rambles about all things close to my heart. Or you can find it and his art through his Patreon at patreon.com/DansMonsters. I listened to a couple of episodes of Dan Rambles, and I think a lot of us will find that what he's talking about is very identifiable. It's amazing how many of us are out there. And on that score, we had a comment on YouTube this week from Loris Arvendu, who said, "It's 1974-ish, and I'm 12 years old. On the way to and from school, I have to walk through the town centre, and the big W.H. Smith newsagent is open. It's one of those shops on a corner, with 2 entrances, and you can walk straight through it on the way. But being an avid reader of science fiction, I stop at the paperback section, where I start seeing these Mayflower books, with Moorcock in big white letters on a strange, surrealistic cover. I read the back. They say Michael Moorcock is one of the foremost writers of science fantasy, so I cautiously buy one, not really sure what I'm in for. Since up until then, I've only been reading Arthur C. Clarke, Brian Aldiss, and Isaac Asimov novels with spaceships by Chris Foss on the covers. The first book I get has a weird picture on the cover of the top of a man's head with a black jewel in his forehead. It's 25p, which is probably my pocket money for a week, but my God, it's worth it and I'm immediately hooked. Over the next few years I buy every Moorcock book I can get my hands on, some as soon as they appear in print, and he quickly becomes my absolute favourite author. That first book was, of course, The Jewel in the Skull. Thanks for that, chum. Always great to hear about this stuff. We also had a W.H. Smith with 2 entrances in Hull that was a thoroughfare from the bus station, and I regularly got stuck in there looking at books and Crash magazine. And of course thanks to our crafty jugaderos, Alexander Harris, Christian Hundal, Eliel Weston-Ra, Loz, Taylor, Matthew Broom, Graham Holden, Toby White, and Thanasis Beltios. An eternal thanks to our patron demons Alistair Davison, Andy Clark, Andy Darby, David Lee, Fred Quiche, Gareth Wilson, Glenn Sawyer, Greg Faulkner, Gwen Barlow, Ian Stead, Imria, Janie Stim, Jason Vogel, Jay Reeser, Joe Monty, Lee Gary, Mark Hebden, Maris Latauskas, Miles Reed-Labato, Neil Burton, Paul Hillary, Randall Gatlin, Steve Round, Tom Murphy, Tony Malazzo, the OG patron, Norman Beresford, and last, but never least, Robert McMillan. Right, enough from me. Don't forget you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram with the handle @BreakfastRuins. You can email us at breakfastruins@outlook.com. The webpage is breakfastintheruins.com. BITR Breakfast in the Ruins Radio is live on Radio Garden or via the web player at breakfastintheruinsradio.blogspot.com. We have our Patreon page too, and there are a few extra odds and sods on there. But for now, take care, stay safe, and we will meet again soon on the Moonbeam Roads.